Out there. Senator McCray, Senator Bailey. Where? Oh, there. Okay, so I'll call you in 1 second. Hey, Senator Bailey, I didn't see you over there. First, real quick, folks, we need to do a re-referral. We were referred a bill that really belongs in appropriations. Senate Bill 442, Economic Development, Sports, Entertainment Facilities, Financing, and Construction by Senator Quarterman. So I make a motion to re-refer this to appropriations. Is there a second? Second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, Senate Bill 442 is re-referred to appropriations. Now, Senator Bailey, Senate Bill 61. Welcome to Ways and Means. Come on up. And you can begin whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and distinguished members of the committee. I am Senator Bailey for the record. I represent District 29, which entitles St. Mary's and the southern end of Calvert County. It is my honor to be here and represent this bill to you today. Senate Bill 61 is identical to House Bill 599, which was sponsored by Delegate Hartman, which you heard earlier this session. This bill would give local governments the authority to determine which public safety officers are eligible for local property tax credits in their jurisdiction. And this bill repeals an existing $2,500 limit on the amount of this credit. This credit is granted at the discretion of the county or municipal government. There is no state fiscal impact, and the impact on local governments is limited to those who choose to implement this credit. As you're aware, we have a lot of bills that come through in this form every year. Each municipality, each county looks at it and says, well, we want to include this part of public safety. We want to include this other. We worked in the budget and tax to make this one encompassing bill so that it applies to each local government and they can apply it how they see fit. This bill passed the Senate 45-0. I respectfully request a favorable report on Senate Bill 61. I thank you each for your consideration, and I will stand for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Senator Bailey? Any more thumbs up as opposed from Hornberger? Oh, okay. Delegate Wells gave you a thumbs up. All right, well, that's it. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
That concludes the testimony on Senate Bill 61. We have a thin audience, folks. Senate Bill 41. Come on up and introduce yourself. This is a Senator McCray bill.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Paris Holmes. I am here testifying on behalf of Senate Bill 41 for Senator Corey McCray. All right, I'll start. Good afternoon. I'm testifying here on behalf of Senator Corey McCray. I'm testifying in support of this bill, Senate Bill 41, which protects and provides for nonprofits, organizations in Baltimore City from paying unnecessary property taxes. The opportunity for tax exemption for organizations that are not-for-profit is upon request for a limited time, and they'll have access to retroactive exemptions for 3 taxable years. Real property owners will have coverage following this bill. Roberta's House, which is a family grief center located in Baltimore City and is a not-for-profit located in the heart of Baltimore, unfortunately have encountered discrepancies with this, with current laws in place. And so this bill would essentially enable them to get coverage for that, for the taxes that they paid that they should not have as a not-for-profit organization. The objective of having this in place is to grant organizations like Roberta's House a safe space for when unpredictable events might occur. The City of Baltimore will have permission to look back at past documents, find the root of the issue, regardless of whether the city, state, or not-for-profit is in error, and the importance of providing a clear route for finding a solution. And for all these reasons provided, I urge the committee for a favorable report. on Senate Bill 41. Thank you.
Paris, one, good to see you again.
But good to see you also.
Didn't recognize you in your new role. I see SDAT is here if there are any questions on this particular bill. Committee, are there any questions? Delegate Wells? Oh, no, you guys are giving the thumbs up caucus over here. Okay. All right, well, thank you very much.
Awesome.
That concludes the testimony on Senate Bill 41. Senate Bill 384.
Thank you.
Okay. Come on up. Good to see you, Senator McKay. Whenever you're ready, you can begin.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. For the record, Senator Mike McKay, presenting Senate Bill 384. This is a local bill for Garrett County. It increases the tax sale auctioneer fees on each property sold. It's going to go from $8 to $10. Passed favorable in the Senate. Everybody was a kumbaya moment back home, and would ask for your favorable vote on this bill.
Any questions? Any thumbs up? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes the testimony on Senate Bill 384. I see Senate Bill 32. Senator Brooks. Welcome, 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 sir. Whenever you're ready.
All righty. Well, good afternoon. I'm Chair Atterbury and members of the Ways and Means Committee. The first testimony before the House. Good to be back over. Yeah. The bill I'm introducing, Senate Bill 32, and the primary purpose of this bill is to allow a spouse of a veteran to use something other than the normal paper that they would use to apply for an exemption for a disabled veteran, a person who's 100% disabled. Then they can get property tax credit up to 100% of whatever that particular property tax are. And this bill just merely expands a type of qualifying documentation that's allowed under the application process. Yeah. So it's a very simple bill, and it helps veterans. And if we want to go into more detail, I've got someone here who can express on that.
Senator.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins. My name is Michael Higgs, and I am Director of the Maryland State Department of Assessments and Taxation. SDAT strongly supports Senate Bill 32. This bill was unanimously passed by the full Senate and was the first bill of the session to cross over to the House. Currently, the department can only accept a disabled veteran's certificate of disability from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs as proof of eligibility for the disabled veterans tax credit. This legislation allows the department to also accept a rating decision from the Department of Veterans Affairs as proof of eligibility for the disabled veterans tax credit. The department wants to make tax credit applications as easy as possible to complete. Allowing other forms of identification assists us with this mission. Please note that this legislation does not change who is eligible for the tax credit. For these reasons, SDAT urges a favorable vote on Senate Bill 32. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thanks, Madam Chair and Committee.
That concludes the testimony on Senate Bill 32. Senator Kagan, Senate Bill 339. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Great to be in Ways and Means, and I got to give a special shout out to 2/3 of the delegates from District 17. So good to see you all, friends. Congrats on making crossover. Senate Bill 3, Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the senator for Gaithersburg and Rockville, for the record. Senate Bill 339 is updates and clarifies our recount laws. We passed a recount law last year that dealt with who pays and when you're even allowed to ask for a recount. This updates the code, which had some options for doing recounts that don't even exist anymore, technology that we're not even using. It clarifies that there are 3 options plus planning for the future, and a 4th option, any technology or method that the state administrator allows in the future. It also clarifies And I'm sure this committee knows about internet-delivered ballots and the challenge that they face, that they place on our local boards of elections. As you know, when people vote through an internet-delivered ballot, they have to print out on their home computer, on their home printer, and the paper that they print does not go through our scanners, so it has to be hand duplicated by bipartisan teams. This also clarifies, as amended, that we need to keep those batches together, both the pieces of paper that our constituents used, as well as the duplicated copy onto ballots that is ultimately scanned, and that's going to be the easiest way to verify accuracy. It doesn't happen often, but it is a place where there may be more likely to have an error, and so we want to make sure that that's easy to recount. It passed unanimously, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, that concludes the testimony on Senate Bill 339. Senate Bill 863, Senator Kagan.
Thank you very much. Again, Cheryl Kagan, District 17. This bill, as it passed the Senate, is simply a brackets bill. It removes language that was added to our code in 2005 that made a special exemption and set a special higher standard that was basically impossible to meet for removing our administrator of our State Board of Elections. We think it's time to treat that position the same as we treat other state employees. And again, the Senate passed this as simply a brackets bill. The House had a different version, and we are hoping to keep it simple, Madam Chair, and just move forward with this important bill. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions from the committee? Madam Vice Chair.
Hi, Senator. It's good to see you.
Hello,
and always
Delegate
good.
Wilkins.
Yes, always good to work together on different election law bills. As you mentioned, we did pass different versions of this subject matter regarding this bill. And the one thing that I'm curious about, I think what the House had added to theirs was a procedure for how does this move forward this year, given that there is someone in place. What do the dates look like? What does the process look like? And so on and so forth was sort of the methodology. Without that, because I know you mentioned this was a brackets bill, if you can just talk about how this is to proceed and in terms of the timeline as well, just with this bill just removing some language from the code.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice Chair and Election Subcommittee Chair. So, like the Senate, the House changed the effective date, which was really important. And it's now June 1, even though we are waiting to get new Board of Elections members in July. So this will allow 1 month for the current board to consider, to take action, to do as it chooses prior to the new board members being approved by Senate executive nominations, nominated first by the parties, and then approved and sworn in to serve. So in that month, they can choose to take action, but this is really about the longer term of making sure that this position is treated equally along with our other state employees. In our view, there shouldn't be any special standards, nothing higher or lower, just serve at the pleasure. And just a reminder, colleagues, that this bill requires a supermajority of the 5 members of the bipartisan State Board of Elections. So must be 4 of the 5. There has to be, 5 people appointed, and so there would have to be bipartisan cooperation in order to make a change.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you all. Good luck.
That concludes the testimony on Senate Bill 863. Senate Bill 287, Senator Gallian's office, come on up.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the Ways and Means Committee. For the record, Jordan Glassman on behalf of Senator Jason Gallion. SB 287's identical cross-file of HB 509. We'd like to thank the committee for its unanimous favorable vote, and we'd respectfully request a favorable report on SB 287 as well. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you. That concludes the testimony on Senate Bill 287. Senate Bill 435, Senator Klausmeyer's office.
Hello. Thank you, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, excuse me, members of Ways and Means. For the record, my name is Sam Deschanel. I'm a Legislative Director for Senator Klausmeyer, here to present Senate Bill 435. Senate Bill 435 is identical to House Bill 508, which was introduced by Delegate Dana Jones and passed this committee and the House floor unanimously. And I can answer any questions that you have on the bill.
Any questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you. That concludes the testimony on Senate Bill 435. Just in the nick of time, Senate Bill 114, Senator Hayes, come on up.
Talk about fast service. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of Ways and Means. Senator Antonio Hayes from 40th Legislative District, Baltimore City. Proud to be here this afternoon. Before you, I have a really simple bill. Senate Bill 114 is really the brainchild of one of our local councilmen, Councilman Costello, who sought to solve a problem that our constituents was having in the complexity and ambiguity that exists in displaying a constant yield and publications. This bill is to simplify that. I think one of the sources of confusion in our local jurisdictions and their efforts to post the constant yield, which most people don't even know what the constant yield is, I became familiar with it as I introduced this bill, is that it gives the impression to taxpayers that taxes are actually being raised, when the truth of the matter is assessments go up and thereby that you realize an increase in taxes. And so this bill seeks to clarify that and create options by which, if there was a situation where your local jurisdiction was raising taxes, that would be evident and more transparent to the constituency. And so with that, Madam Chair, I'll yield for any questions, but I urge a favorable report for Senate Bill 114. House Bill 1, yeah, Senate Bill 114.
Okay, we have, I think Kevin Canale, are you going to testify? And Justin Fiore, come on up in support of the bill, and then we'll do questions.
Yep. Good to see you guys.
All right, good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. Justin Fiore here on behalf of the Maryland Municipal League in full support of Senate Bill 114, especially as it was amended coming over. This has been an issue for years. You've heard from us, probably from your local officials back home. People don't understand the constant yield. The notice language has been clunky. It leads to confusion. It leads to anger. This bill seeks to fix that and move us away from constant yield as a concept. So it would replace the constant yield notification with one that says, if a municipality raises their real property tax rate, this is the notification. Constant yield is a great tool for tax practitioners to understand the measure, but it's not the be-all, end-all of measuring sticks. So because it's a bit of a flawed mechanism, we think that this increases transparency, eliminates confusion, and is a good solution for Maryland. With that, we urge a favorable vote.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Kevin Canale here on behalf of the Maryland Association of Counties in strong support of the bill. I think my colleague and the good senator explained the issue here, but there's no doubt that the constant yield, especially the notifications, are extremely confusing. No one understands what it means. Everybody thinks that a local government is actually raising the tax rate. And we agree that if a local government is going to raise the rate, you should absolutely put a notice in the paper. And that's what this bill does. What the bill also does is eliminate all the confusing legalese that people don't understand, and they show up and they're very angry and upset. And once they realize what's actually happened, which is that ESTAT, the state, has raised their assessment, that they kind of go away. They realize that the county or the municipality is not raising taxes. So we think this is a really smart and streamlined bill. It will eliminate confusion, and it will still make sure that people are informed if a local government is going to raise their tax rate, and that's exactly what should happen. And we'd urge a favorable report on this bill, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Delegate Plakovich-Carr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator, for this piece of legislation. I actually have a question for Mr. Fiore, because I noticed in the bill that one of the notification requirements is publication in a newspaper, but I seem to recall that one of MML's priorities for this year was to try to move away from those newspaper publications because of the cost to municipalities and general ineffectiveness. Was that part of the consideration in the Senate?
Thank you for the question. Actually, in conversations that I had with the Senate, they wanted to add the website piece in there just as another transparency measure. This is separate of our strategic initiative to focus on communications. We don't have a bill to move away from newspaper notifications, but this is just something the Senate wanted to do.
Thank you.
Delegate Hartman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, thank you for the presentation on the bill. Having been in an elected office, local office, I certainly understand the heartburn those messages create, but how are we going to get the message to the property owners, the truth in the matter? Because if, taxes are basically going up, if the assessment goes up, I think we have an obligation to the owner to either explain, your assessment has gone up, which could result in an increase in what you're paying. I think it's a severe injustice to the people to try to eliminate it so that we don't get heartburn as elected folks. This is what we signed up for. How are we going to get the message to the property owners that you better start putting more money in the piggy bank, especially when we have a downturn in the economy, when it could take a couple of years for that assessment to catch up, money gets tighter, and these people don't have it in their pocket. I think we have an obligation to those property owners.
So, and I know we've had conversations with SDAT about this, and I know they've been open to, putting a notice in the tax bill that everyone's going to receive. Here's why your assessment went up. Here's what your obligation is going to be. We just don't think that it needs to go in the paper, and it certainly doesn't need to say that local governments are raising taxes. And one other thing, when the state is going to bring in more revenue than it did in the previous year, there's no advertisement in the paper that says, come to Annapolis because we're raising your taxes. It doesn't happen. So I think there's also, there's an equity piece here between the state and the local governments where, we're asked to do this and say that we're raising taxes. The state is never going to do that and shouldn't have to do that. And what constant yield also doesn't take into account, basically the concept is that if you're going to bring in more than you did in the previous year, that's a tax increase. It doesn't account for inflation. It doesn't account for, the blueprint and other mandates. Like we're being asked to do more. I think it's perfectly reasonable to bring in more than you did, and that's normal. But if you're going to raise the rate and you're going to take an action that the local government is going to make a decision, then absolutely you should advertise. But I think that we can notify people by, attaching something to the tax bill that they get in the mail, essentially explaining what happened and why their assessment's gone up and what they should do if they'd like to appeal. And that would be to the State Department of Assessments and Taxation.
So, in your thoughts, does this bill increase transparency or decrease transparency?
I think it absolutely increases transparency because no one understands the requirement that's currently in the paper. If you read it, it doesn't make any sense. And it's all legalese. And so I think this is absolutely increasing transparency because it's simple and easy to understand. And again, you're raising a tax rate, the local government is making a decision, then absolutely you should be notified. But if the assessment has gone up, the local government hasn't done anything. I think it's pretty unfair to say you need to put an ad in the paper that says you're raising taxes when that's actually not what's happening.
Yeah, and I think my panelists spoke to it earlier. I think, part of the thinking of the committee was to try to put as much information out there as possible and leaving the flexibility with a website it's more agile and more information can be shared and understand in this. And so in addition to the newspaper article, having that outlet also available to our citizens and our constituents to understand the actions of their local government. I think if somebody's bill is going up, taxes have increased. So we'll have agree to disagree on this one, but thank you.
Delegate Long.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I briefly remember we had a bill in last year that was called Truth in Taxation. A lot of people don't realize this. You guys constant yield rate can stay the same, or you could possibly lower it. Am I correct?
We could lower the rate, absolutely, but I don't think that's appropriate given the fiscal situation, right? I don't think that a local government should be asked to lower the rate because they're bringing in more than they did last year, maybe because of inflation, maybe because of another reason. But at the same time, we want to do more for our constituents. We want to provide more services. We're being asked to do more by the state. So I don't think it makes much sense that we should lower the real property tax rate because we might bring in a little bit more than we did the year before. I just fundamentally don't think that's appropriate.
I think that we should be open and transparent and let people know that they can possibly lower it or raise it. Like you said, inflation, it's hitting everybody. I mean, especially homeowners. You know, our dollar's not what it used to be, unfortunately. And I understand that things go up and we have to fund these different things. But laying it on assessed value, to me, seems a little bit dishonest. That's my personal, take on it. The thing of it is, assessments can go up, but you don't realize that until after you sell the property. And we had even talked about that. Why should we be paying more taxes on assessments or gains that we don't really realize? And it's really putting a struggle, especially in my district. People are struggling to keep their taxes paid. And I understand Baltimore City's tax rate's 10%, I believe, or 10%, they can go up 10% each year.
No, that's highly inaccurate. Part of the thing with Baltimore City is that much of the state enjoy the wonderful institutions that we have in the city, whether it be world-class shock trauma that saves lives every year, the wonderful institutions of culture and arts in our community. The problem is 30% of that land is untaxable.
Right, I understand.
And so it is a high rate in comparison to other counties, but 10% every year is just factually untrue.
Well, what I was referring to, according to the law, I believe, and maybe they can correct me, I thought that you were allowed to go up 10% each year on assessed values. They can actually raise that up to 10% a year.
They may have the authority to do so, but they haven't exercised that.
But, and I do think the other thing to keep in mind is that it's not the local government who's doing the assessment, and that's for good, right? The state is doing the assessment, so we don't have any role in the assessment. So I do again think that SDAT should include something in the tax bill that explains to people exactly what's going on. It should be transparent. It just shouldn't be the local government telling people that their taxes are going up when the local government hasn't raised any rate, they haven't taken any legislative action. It's just because someone's assessment went up because the state said it's worth more. Again, I guess I want to be transparent, and I do think if we raise the rate, it should absolutely be in the paper, and in the bill, that's what this does. But otherwise, I think that we can certainly include something in someone's tax bill to explain to them what happened and what they should expect.
Well, I guarantee you my constituents know very well what the constant yield rate stands for. And I understand what you're saying. You have a lot of nonprofits in Baltimore City. You have Johns Hopkins, you have every hospital around, and we're blessed to have that. And I understand they don't pay taxes, unfortunately. Thank you.
Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator, for bringing this bill. I just want to make sure we get back to the purpose of the bill and the value that it has for our constituents. I think it's great that the delegate who just spoke, that his constituents know the constant yield terminology very well. This is my first time hearing it. And as a new homeowner, I'm very keenly interested in property taxes and have found it very confusing as an end user. So I just wanted to make sure I understand. This bill is basically giving more information, easy to read and available information to our constituents so they can understand what is going on when it comes to their taxes and in these various situations that could take place. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair. Thank you for your wisdom. And actually, what the committee has done is, adding an opportunity to provide even more information. Publishing in newspapers can be really static, but have an opportunity to publish this information on the website and have additional information available to our constituents make it way more transparent.
Delegate Fair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to build off of our Vice Chair's comments, I just want to make sure, because we got onto that whole SDAT, who should release what. But if the actual rate increase happens at the local level, there is a notification that local jurisdiction has raised their rate per $100 of assessment. Is that correct?
Actually, there's a notification to let people know that there'll be a public hearing. So even better than what your scenario, to let people know when the public hearing is going to take place, that they should come and let their voice be heard. So it's not after you've already taken the action, it's actually before, just to let folks know this is going to happen. So please come and say your piece. And so I think yes, it's giving people the opportunity to come and again, if someone's going to raise a rate or propose to do that, people should absolutely know about it. And that's what this bill does, and it simplifies it, and it does it in a way that everybody can understand.
Yeah, thank you.
Any further questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you.
Thank you so very much, Madam Chair.
That concludes the testimony on Senate Bill 114. Senate Bill 269, is there anyone from Senator Rosapep's office? Come on up.
Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, Committee, thank you for your time. I'm Scott Moore from Senator Rosapep's office. I'm his Chief of Staff. Here today in regards to SB 269. SB 269 is the Senate side cross-file of House Bill 192, which has come through this committee already and was passed unanimously by the House. And we'd ask for a favorable report on this bill as well.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. That concludes the testimony on Senate Bill 269, and that concludes our bill hearings for today, committee. Thank you very much.